Inside Tennis with the Cause.
The shocking news of the passing of Eugene L. Scott was beyond description. Gene Scott was and will always remain an industry tennis giant. Few will be able to accomplish what Gene did as a player, promoter, journalist, leader, and good friend of the game. With his polished demeanor and erudite vernacular, Gene sometimes could be daunting. However, after spending a brief period of time, you realize this man was a humble and a very modest guy. Gene Scott could take someone small and make him feel big. And that's what he did for me. Being invited by Gene Scott to be part of the 7-member crew going to Moscow to cover the 2003 Fed Cup was a memory I will cherish forever.
It's sad in every respect. It's sad for the game of tennis, primarily, because people like Gene don't come along very often. He was a person who managed to be right on the button so often, often with the contrary opinion. He'd swim against the tide, but with sureness of stroke that nobody could ignore, because he had a brilliant mind. He knew the game inside out. Of course, he played it to the highest level. He was a semi-finalist at Forest Hills. He played racket sports to a level that very few people have played them across the board, because he was a court tennis champion in America. He could play squash, he could play anything. He played soccer at Yale. I think he had 4 letters for 4 consecutive years, probably a record that's never going to be broken. So he was a supreme athlete.
He continued playing excellently. He was the world champion in the over 65s, and it was a shock. It really was a shot as well as a shock. A shot to the game of tennis that we could lose this guy, because at 68 he seemed much younger. He was very fit. He had had double hip replacement. That didn't hold him back. He continued to play very well, but he really had the game at heart, and it was nice to see him too in a rather late marriage with 2 very young children. So it wasn't, I've been talking as though this were a great loss to the game, which it was, but of course a greater loss to his family and to his friends.
Gene was a player, he's a lawyer, he was a player agent, Vita Scarolitis, he's a tournament director, he's a publisher, he's a writer. So my tendency is to see an issue, well, how does this affect the players? How does it affect the fans? But Gene is more comprehensive in that he can see, how does it affect the sponsor? How does it affect TV? How does it affect the governing body? So I think his strength is trying to see an issue or a story from all angles.
He never, ever had a problem having a differing opinion than the majority of people out there, and he would back it. He was, dogged about backing his opinion, and I didn't always agree. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't, but you have to admire somebody who had the courage to stand up for what he thought was right and his convictions.
He's done so much in tennis for the USTA, to be a good critic of the USTA and of the tours and try to bring things together. In his last column, he was talking about straightening out the schedule, how it's all messed up, and the Davis Cup dates being held right after major events like the Grand Slams and the NASDAQ, and why can't they work out those dates? Always being an advocate for tennis. That's really going to be missed, and he really can't be replaced.
He's the guy who brought Russia into the big league of tennis when he founded the Kremlin Club in Moscow in 1990. He ran that. The Russians had no idea of how to do that. When it became very successful, they kicked him out, of course, and kept it for themselves.
I had a typical American attitude about Russia and Russian tennis when I was a player, an alleged player. For example, I was asked to come here and play when I was on the tour, and I said, nope, that's the evil empire, I can't do that. And then about 20 years later, after I'd stopped playing, I was asked to be the referee of the Goodwill Games in tennis. And I said, absolutely not. I mean, this is still the evil empire, just as evil as it ever was in the middle of the 1980s. And finally someone came and said, well, you run the biggest indoor tennis tournament in the world at Madison Square Garden. Would you consider being the tournament director of the first Kremlin Cup? And I said, absolutely not. It's borderline evil empire, can't do that. And the founder of the event, Sassoon Kakshuri, he said, please come, I think I can change your mind. So I came in 1990 in a very cold January, for like 2 days. I stayed for 2 weeks and fell in love with not only Russia, but the Russians.
Damn it, Gene, we were counting on you to be around for another 2.5 decades to lead us. We will miss you. We love you, Gene. Tennis fans, we really enjoyed bringing you today's show. We've got some great shows coming up, so plan to join us. But until then, remember, in tennis scoring, love means nothing, but love of the game means everything. Keep alive your love of the game. Love you, tennis fans, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye for now.
Inside Tennis with the Cons has been brought to you by Babylon, the racket, string, and shoe choice of today's champions.